watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the March 23rd workshop for the Michigan City Board of Public Works and Safety. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
All right, we will call this workshop to order. It is 8:32 in the morning. We are continuing our review of the police officers' SOPs and manual, and I will turn it over to the chiefs.
Yeah, again, obviously, right, the last couple of meetings we've spent and gone through our policies, in which essentially been reworked into new formatting, right, and working with Lexipol again, just to echo what we've already stated, but working, make sure we're on top of any state or federal mandates, along with best practices throughout the country. And again, the same thing now. I would say a big part for us is essentially now we've separated our policies and procedures, which were essentially cohesive in one living document prior to this. Now our procedures are separate from our policies. And as I'm assuming you saw as we dive into these procedures, it's really the how-to, right? These all essentially correspond with a policy, and I believe by policy number, right? Like essentially, right, policy 100, procedure 100, mesh, right? So when we're talking, the law enforcement role and authority under, that is cohesive with procedure 100. So again, essentially goes through the how-to. Let's say at the board's leisure on how we want to proceed through these. We can again show you some prime examples. Again, I think last time we kind of showed our draft status workbook that kind of shows the agency content, right? Which was previous content in which we had in our essentially our previous policy and procedure. Right now it's again separated into its own procedure now. So again, the section essentially 100.2 is the content that was taken from that policy, separated now into its own procedure. And again, not much new language changes in these. Again, it's just separating them from the policies. And anything else?
Yeah, I think you'll see the policy 100 that kind of shows obviously what the next step is for us. After the completion of this workshop and approval from Board of Works, we'll reach out to the Dunes Lodge or FOP Dunes Lodge 75, and then shortly thereafter we'll roll them out to our staff. I think we've had conversations, and I think our intent is to take these policies and procedures and not kind of all at once get them to our people or whatnot, but probably push out a few meaningful ones at a time, just so it's kind of a gradual process for us. So I know we do appreciate you guys spinning this up so fast, kind of in relative to when we were kind of ready to go. And I mean, I think the meaningful thing is that once we get through this portion of it and gain your guys' approval to allow us to really be calculated and meaningful in the way that we roll it out to our staff, and it kind of just helps adoption and understanding, gives us that time. So, yeah.
Is there any particular procedures you want to look at, or just want to give us, would you like to just provide a few examples of from different sections? You want to go, how far do we want to push forward today would be my question. So we are ready to push as far forward as we can. Yeah.
And it's probably elsewhere. Unfortunately, I didn't get through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I really apologize. But I would like to send any comments afterwards to you if we're done today. And I'll copy whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed specifically under 200.3.4, and it probably is elsewhere, but I don't know. Under A, number 1, when in his opinion, we're talking about the mayor. I wonder if reference to the mayor should now be their opinion or some commentary like that.
Yeah, or just change it to the
Mayor.
mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor. And there, I also noticed that in B1 also in his call for a curfew. But again, I haven't.
Mhm.
But then it says it in B1 when the mayor declares. Without permission of the mayor. At the discretion of the mayor. Yeah.
Good catch. Yeah, it's probably throughout the document. If I had to guess, at least in regards to the mayor, we'll have to, one of the benefits we can do is a keyword search. Yeah.
That's the only
We can do a keyword search for mayor.
I just did it. It was only those two.
Okay, those two policies.
Yeah, where it's referred to he, where it should be the mayor, at least in this policy. And you can double check that and we're going there.
So you're already on it, all right.
It's a good catch.
Again, as we go in through some of these, again, our training policies and, training procedures, again, it just lays out, right, some of the mandates, that are required. Have to, 203 talks about successfully completing. So we're working on something like that. Again, just setting out those things that you must do, right? You must complete to be, appointed to the position of patrolman, right? Again, these are things in which we've obviously been known to operate under. Again, just now it separates that policy and the procedures. So, how to become a patrolman, right? You need to have, completing the recruit academy training, all phases of field training, all phases and aspects of the probationary period. And then it lays out some training guidelines, remedial training schedules, and some, obviously.
I also like the training of those who are promoted to corporal, sergeant, lieutenant captains. I like that.
Yeah, and again, just lays out some of that stuff in which, again, those are obviously things, right? When you do get promoted, right? There's new role, new responsibilities,
Their responsibility.
and obviously we do a great job with that, and having really Captain Greg Jesse's kind of headed that up for us the last several years. Essentially as our ranking, highest ranking tenured captain. And obviously he's fulfilled all those roles from corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, and then captain now. And, so again, he does a great job with that, making sure that we're upholding that stuff. But again, this is, lays it out for the next person, right? So if, for whatever reason, everybody was said and gone today, right? The next person can come in and have some guidelines into how we operate and,
Yeah, because we didn't really have that when I was coming through. We had to learn on the fly.
Yeah, and I think it's important, right? We can always learn where we've come from, right? And updating things. Again, case in point, policies and procedures. But again, learn from where we've been, learn where we're at, and so obviously we can push forward into making ourselves better and stronger. Again,
So I'm glad you have the boundary restrictions for the vehicles duly noted.
right.
Yeah.
Read that again.
This one, I think, if you look at 207, again, this is, something that obviously I think is critical for us, that obviously we're fiscally smart and, and accountable. And again, just laying out some of those procedures ultimately that Chief Cooney, and ultimately I operate under. But again, just having those as guidelines is instrumental,
Yeah, in our last meeting, we discussed off-duty behavior.
Mhm.
You do have it addressed in here.
Correct. Let's see. I don't remember which one that one was. I remember which one that was, Gene, by chance, or was that 301?
Well, you guys are looking for that note in 207. We spent a few minutes talking last meeting about the way cash and money is handled, and I think this is another area where we are able to put our unique language that we require as an agency with between obviously any cash from the city, but also as a section here with the Port County Drug Task Force accounts specific to how they are managed and operated. And so I just wanted to touch on that, where it's like another example where we can kind of integrate what we need as an agency within what is, kind of that best practice and or required outside of that scope. So.
I think both like 311 or anything. Obviously, that's when it's key. It's a little bit lengthy, but it does, I think it's just a good example. This is the arrest procedures, but it clearly defines obviously an arrest, probable cause for an arrest and exigent circumstances, and again, this is, I would say, an example of, right, the how-to do this thing, right? How to make an arrest. So obviously the requirements to obtain a warrant, you need all, this information, right? The procedure, right? The arrest procedures with a warrant, okay, issued by, warrant shall be served by sworn police officers of the department, may be served at any time, day or night. Again, it just really breaking down the details on essentially of an arrest, again, whether it's a warrant arrest, whether it's our warrant, whether it's a warrant arrest from another agency. And then again, down in, I think, section F, it starts talking about arrest procedures without a warrant.
And how to deal with foreign diplomats.
Yeah,
You never know.
Just in case.
right.
In fact, if that day ever did came, I'm sure the three of us would be looking at this.
Exactly.
We need to do.
Calvin, what do I do with this?
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hold on, let me.
Well, maybe I'm mistaken, but right, didn't former President Clinton had visited Michigan City, and not only Michigan City, but had his, I believe his Secret Service limousines were in the basement of the police department.
I was in charge of
Yeah.
security from our department, working with the Secret Service on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was an experience.
yeah. So something that very well could happen again here, right?
Easily.
Right, so
I
again,
would
it's,
have thought he would come through Michigan City and actually stop
yeah,
and spend the whole day
right.
practically. Yeah, that was huge. A lot of security.
You did reference, our assigned vehicle policy, right? 313 is under that one. Again, it just talks about, the procedures in which, go along with that. The assignment of vehicles, the off-duty use, as far as, having civilian passengers, right? Non-family members is discouraged as a practice. Obviously officers will use discretion and good judgment when transporting other than immediate family members. Again, it does lay out the boundaries in which you indicated as well, right? To the north is the Michigan state line, south is US 30, east is LaPorte St. Joe County line, and west is LaPorte Porter County line.
When you look at in the region, police departments, everybody tends to jockey around the same salary, but this take-home vehicle policy we have is a huge point for retention for us and keeping our employees here, and because this is such, not every agency, especially as you start to get to our size or even larger, have take-home vehicle policies, but
Huge.
it's,
A lot of piracy among departments.
Yeah.
but it's one that requires a lot of well, how do I say it? Extra management, personnel management with some of this, but it does truly make a difference to our guys and gals out there for keeping them here in Michigan City and retaining them, I should say.
Again, it does even go into, right, we operate off of fuel limits, right? So if you do essentially live, a little bit farther out, right, or farther south, right, you're still essentially mandated to those gallons of fuel per month. Again, we always reference officers, right? If you were driving your personal car to and from Michigan City every day, how much gas would you have to put in it, right? So if we encourage all of our officers to keep track of their fuel and whatnot and what they're using, and if it gets over, right, I know they need to account for that, right, and notify us. We do have monthly reports that we receive from essentially IT and central maintenance regarding fuel usage, right? We have to track that, but it's important that our officers are tracking that stuff and holding themselves accountable, so we're not just filling up patrol cars for personal use type thing, right? These are obviously the primary use of this vehicle is for patrol operations, right? Or, police operations. So again, another way the policy or the procedure essentially lays out, right, the how-to and what we can and cannot do. Oh, let's see what else.
Reading 306, procedure 306, discriminatory harassment and procedures. That was very definitive.
Yeah, correct. And again, I think it's obviously right. It's the utmost important, right, that we, are operating, without bias, right? Mm-hmm. And again, this is another way that lays that stuff out for us. Or right, if there is a complaint regarding, right, harassment, it even explains, the how-to on how to submit that complaint, whom to submit it to. And right, if it's not even, it doesn't prevent an employee from filing a complaint or a grievance, with an outside agency or the city personnel department or, human rights department or anything like that. So again, it gives everybody, all of our employees the information they need, right? So they can ultimately handle any situation in which they felt like maybe there was some harassment or discrimination.
Chief, at what level does a complaint rise to an outside investigation? I assume the first level is an internal review within the department itself. After that, when does it go to LaPorte County and even outside of LaPorte County for the impartiality?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, right, anything, basically any criminal type offenses, right, we generally have always forwarded those to the Indiana State Police, right, and let them handle those things. Once it reaches that level, there may be, right, an internal complaint or something that, fact finding is done and complete, and then it's like, oh, we have something more here, right? At that point in time, we would obviously pass that.
So the ball gets passed to the ISP.
Correct,
typically.
Yeah, for us, and again, the Lowell post up here of the Indiana State Police, they kind of, I would say that's ultimately the standard kind of at least for LaPorte County, right? We don't really, to my knowledge, we've never done any, I would say, investigating of any law enforcement agencies within LaPorte County. Generally, that stuff gets forwarded to the state police and let them handle it at their level. I think it's just separates ourselves a little bit even farther.
Sounds like best practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, a lot of times there's an internal investigation that's actually independent from a criminal one. So if there's criminal acts, there's going to be, the officer's going to have to face that criminal side of the investigation with that investigating agency or prosecutor's office, if you will. And then internally, we do our own. Because obviously an officer with garrity and things like that are sometimes in a position where they have to answer something for administrative purposes, but it's kept separate from that criminal investigation. So I think to what Chief was saying is that I think a lot of times the way it happens is somebody does something that rises to maybe a criminal offense, but we're doing two things at the same time. We're doing ours for our internal portion, and then the totally insulated from us is that criminal side of it, just to keep things kosher.
Again, as you kind of go through general operations here, again, we have police canine, emergency response to calls, domestic violence, dealing with the mentally ill, juvenile enforcement, school liaison, civil disturbances, again, the VIP, security plan, special operations, the list goes on and on, right? Obviously, this is a huge section for us, in general operations. Again, I think a good example might be 331. Again, when we start talking about firearms disposal, again, just lays out essentially the how-to, right? Gives us the Indiana code. Ultimately, right, what we have to do, lost or abandoned firearms.
This one's another example where it originally came from one of our pre-established policies, and so that's where you see this agency content. I know we talked about that some last time, but this was already something that we had in play. There's nothing really different. It did get sectioned off from a policy and procedure, so they both live in the same area or in the same ecosystem. But to Chief's point, a lot of these, that's what you're going to see with a lot of these procedures, is that they're stuff that is pre-existing that we'd already been doing, but that now you see them living in kind of two different areas, addressing obviously in this situation the how-to.
If we want to move on to a little bit of section 4, right, patrol operations. Again, everything from, crime scene procedures, literally, starts laying out the roles and responsibilities of the first employees on scene, right? Again, these are obviously guidelines, so again, these are things obviously we learn right through practice as we come across these things and do them. But again, as part of our training program and FTO, we're obviously going through a lot of these things, and this would be a good example of one that we want to touch on. Right, proceed with caution in the event the suspects are still in the area. Right, is there medical assistance needed? Again, just control the flow of people. Literally just step by step what you want to do, right? Pay attention to possibly entry or exit points, begin a crime scene log, and again, these things are ultimately obviously the best practice, but as long as we're doing these things in place, we're going to have, it's going to help us build a good case too, right? We're following these steps and, maintaining a secure crime scene, tracking who's coming, who's going, right? So we ultimately, know who's been there, who could have been in that crime scene, right? We talk about DNA, and sometimes there's, contamination type stuff, and have some DNA on scene. Well, we can justify, Assistant Chief Shaparsky was at the crime scene, assisting that day. That's why his DNA was there. It's not because he was involved in the crime. He was there, in a police capacity. So again, just great guidelines that help our people get through situations in which maybe they're not familiar with or haven't experienced yet. And again, I think an easy way, having this accessible, and again, the benefits of Lexipol is this is accessible right in their cars, you know, at the click of a few buttons, you know, on their MDTs. So
If you go to section 406, I think this is a kind of a good one as well to go over. This is essentially, I feel like in the last 5-10 years, school shootings and things of that nature have just, from a law enforcement standpoint, the way that what is expected of us in those situations, right? You see the good, the bad, the ugly, but what's really changed is the training and the awareness that is now kind of dumped through and pushed through police departments. So if you go to 406, you know, it is even the nomenclature and the terms that are used, you know, active attack and things like casualty collective point and things like that, where you see these large scale potentially mass casualty situations really start to get an additional focus. And this is something where this can change after the next one, right? The next, you know, unfortunately these incidents happen, and, you know, hopefully not here. But when the next one happens elsewhere, the goalpost may change a little because of something small that happened in that incident to make us more robust. And so this would be an example of where, you know, 5 years ago, this procedure, these policies around these active attack incidences looks different than what it does now. But again, with Lexipol and with what we're able to do here, we can keep these up to date for our people, because ultimately, you know, we did a training on these situations just these past couple of months. And, you know, guys and gals can go back in here and look at these. You know, right now they were trying to look at the policy. It's it's almost, 8 years old now, and it's just not reflective of how we're doing it right now. And so that's what I really do like about this specific one, is that it's got everything current. It's got everything we're trained on. And, you know, believe it or not, there are officers out there that will go in and they'll have a call at the high school, and they'll be like, you know what, I haven't looked at that active attack procedure and policy recently. They can go in and look at it and know what they're getting is up to date with what's going to be expected of them should that time come.
It's horrifying that you guys have to train for that, but I was really happy to see the multi-department testing you do or training you did at the high school. But again, it's horrifying to read that this is what we have to do now.
it's one of those unfortunate things, right? We used to do fire drills in school, right, or tornado drills and whatnot, you know. And unfortunately, at this day and age, we have to have active attack type drills, and and again, that's not just limited to the schools, right? That's something in which we have to train for and prepare for, and knock on wood, right? Just hoping that we never have to put that training or skills into play, right?
And even now, you look at the training we do now for these one, just because it's fresh in my mind because I just went through it. But you have this idea of seeing containment, but then you always know there's going to be parents coming, there's going to be guardians coming, and the idea that there's a whole separate side of this situation called a reunification, right? Where there's officers dedicated to making sure the parents and kids are reunited in a specific spot, so you don't run into situations where the parents just don't know where their child's at, And I think, going through that training myself recently, it's nothing new for us per se, but it's to Scott's point here. I mean, it is comforting knowing that our guys and gals are prepared, right, for this should this happen, and that should be something to comfort the community should things should go that direction. But again, we have to be able to keep up with the times and continue to update these as the standard practices do as well.
Yeah, you could take from that incident back years ago in Texas. That was terrible.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, definitely unfortunate, right? Situation there.
Feelings, right?
That's you know, where we have to train our people to do that, right? You know, obviously we've taken an oath, we have the tools and, you know, the training, you know, to push in there, right? To defend people
Exactly.
that are defenseless.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, so again, I can't imagine being in that situation, you know, wanting to ultimately, right, put myself in harm's way, right? But that's, you know, a mental part of our training in which we have to train that, because, right, you may get put in that situation. You know, nobody, I don't think, on our department ever wants to be put in a deadly force situation. You know, but I'd like to think that, right, given the, you know, if the opportunity presented itself, I think our people will handle themselves, you know, in a professional manner in which, you know, they should.
What's your goal response time for SWAT to show up? Because SWAT will show up. You guys have body armor and stuff. You're well better protected.
I mean, for those situations, SWAT is it's really an afterthought because everybody's just trying to get there and they're going to have responsibilities. And then once SWAT is established, they're really there for, you know, a further search and just, you know, kind of helping out with the security type stuff more so than going in. So.
And I think one of obviously the benefit for us in our department is our SWAT team members are on every shift.
Yeah.
Right, they have some of those additional tools and training, right, you know, is at the patrol level.
And their gear is in the car.
Gears in the car, right? You know, so they have that additional training and tools, weapons, you know, tactics, right? All that stuff is available to them, right, in the response, you know, to that. So again, you know, they're integrated on each shift, right? So again, we would have that response at the immediate. We'll move on to section 5, right? We talk about traffic operations, again, traffic citations and warnings. Again, just breaking down the how-to. You know, using our electronic citation and warning system, right? We've become much easier than, right, the old school day of writing them and pressing hard and getting writers cramped. Literally now, right, essentially we have, you know, scanners in our cars and whatnot. We can scan IDs, you can scan registrations, and it just auto-populates that information, which obviously makes it, you know, more efficient and accurate, I think. But again, just breaks down the officers, you know, issuing citations and warnings, you know, their responsibilities, you know, completing certain fields. One thing that's good about the e-ticket, right, is that, you know, there's required fields, right, which all those specific fields have to be filled out before you can proceed. So there's no missing, you know, those required fields and whatnot. They can explain the charge or court options to the violator.
So we talked about evacuation for schools in emergencies. Are we working on government buildings evacuation, or how to safeguard sanitary district, city hall?
Yeah, I believe we started, I think, a conversation, I think, with Kelly, and there's a few other people in that room. But, you know, we have to follow through with that stuff. And again, come up with the emergency plan for, obviously, City Hall, but I think other public, you know, buildings as well. You know, we have to, I think, continue that training. Again, something I would say we probably just take for granted, I think, that everybody's doing, but I think it's something we have to take sometimes the leadership role on it. Because, again, I think we have the most experience in dealing with it right now. So it's something we definitely, you know, we talk about the active attack response. I mean, that response is going to be wherever that is, right? Whether it's you know, a church, a school, a public building, the response, you know, from us is going to be similar regardless. But I think it's training those people on how to respond, right? You know, when it's happening here, like, you know, who's going to do what, where am I going to go, and, you know.
Yeah, that's the other side of that coin. You know, there's a lockdown
No,
here in the building.
Right, you know,
What's that noise?
and again, they're,
What's going on?
right.
We always, I mean, here, when there's a ruckus, people come out instead of staying in.
Lock the doors.
You know, so again, I think it's, you know, it's important, right, that we do have some type of emergency response plan, you know, because again, you know, there's been situations in which, right, fire alarms have been triggered and, you know, what happens when you do that, right? Everybody comes running out to see what's going on. And, you know, you probably, you know, you need to do some evaluating, right? Am I in immediate, you know, danger right now? Is this room on fire? Is that room on fire? Then yeah, I need to evacuate. But if I don't feel any immediate danger, do I need to evacuate, right? You go into the, you know, I see the simple terms are the run, hide, fight, right? If I can run and remove myself from a situation, I want to do that, right? If I can't, right, or I feel like there's a need, I, you know, hide, right? Close the doors, lock them, get in a corner, get out of sight, type of thing. And then, you know, last case scenario would be the fight, right? If you know, somebody comes through the door, you know, whatever the tools, you know, or anything at my disposal, the flagpoles or whatever, you know, those things, you know, are weapons in which we can fight. But again, we probably, we definitely need to sit down and evaluate the, you know, the city buildings and, you know, that emergency action plan. So again, we have been doing that, like obviously with schools, but, you know, other businesses throughout the city. Lieutenant Mike King has done a great job of going there and essentially, right, teaching that type of class, right? You know, helping them formulate a plan, and then obviously, right, it's on each individual, right, to execute, you know, their plan or that type of plan. So obviously something that we need to coordinate going forward with the City Hall and other government buildings.
Library too, since they're a separate entity, and we do have
Lots of
members
people.
of the public that hang out there and lots of hiding places.
Yeah. What else you got there, Chief Cooney? Any good policy or procedures you're looking at there? Just looking at investigative operations. Again, when to call out, how to do it, right? We maintain a call out list for our detectives, for on call, for.
Yeah, over the last few years, we kind of changed our call out, our on-call schedule. It used to be 7 days in a row, Monday through Monday, basically morning you're on call. We changed that a little bit. Over the last 2 years, it's more of a rotation now. It's only one detective on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They all split it up. And then for Friday, Saturday, Sundays, it's when they're on call for the weekend. And that just rotates around every 8 to 10 weeks. It kind of takes the burden off them. You know, doing 7 days in a row is a lot. You catch something big on a Monday and you still have the weekend to go. And it's just, it can be burdensome. So we're trying to share that a little bit. It's been a good transition.
But yeah, ultimately, right, we have a detective on call 24/7, right, 365. Again, the procedure on how to do that, right? You know, what warrants a call out, you know, and then what happens, right, when somebody doesn't come, right, when they fail to answer.
You can have some red flags on there that need to be taken out.
What else? Again, handling confidential informants.
You see them?
Yes.
Okay.
Confidential, I'm sorry. 608, right, is identity deception. You know, again, what to do and how to investigate, you know, identity theft. It defines it, legal the legal prohibitions of that. Let's see. Again, something that we don't see every day, but it does happen. You know, victims of sexual assault. Again, you know, really gives the guidelines and can help an officer walk through, you know, what is needed for those cases. You know, how to collect the evidence. Yeah, submitting that stuff to the lab. Really can break down the details. Again, that's to me what's key in the procedures. Is, you know, the how-to, right? How can, you know, I have an idea of what to do or what I'm looking for, but again, if I'm looking for a specific procedure, again, whether it's sexual assaults or whatnot, collecting the evidence kits, I can easily search the procedures manual, and we can, you know, kind of get the walkthrough on how to collect that, how to document it, and you know, essentially what to do with that type of evidence.
Last one, so I'm just gonna try to push it out.
So it seems like in any deep review like this, there are going to be a lot of minor changes. Would you say there's a top 10 substantive changes that should be highlighted, maybe?
I know we went over some big ones last meeting with some of the stuff around, you know, Brady Giglio, personnel files, things of that nature. And then I think in terms of these procedures, I don't know if there's a lot that has changed outside of what we've discussed.
And whatever changes we have are essentially aligning us with nationwide best practices. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, as we mentioned before, you get the state mandated or the training board from the academy will mandate that we have to follow certain things, and then also state law and federal law. So just being in conjunction with that. I think for the procedures, a lot of this is what we're already doing, and now it's just in this format, you know, which helps out a lot, I think. So.
Yeah, and again, as we filter through these, right, you see a lot of them are listed as agency content. So that's pre-existing content that we had. Again, it's just in a new format and or separated. Again, previously our policies and procedures were essentially one long document, right? It would, you know, give the policy on it, and then it would, you know, give the how-to, essentially separating that now, right? So your policies are more of those guidelines, right? And then the procedures are the, you know, how-to with those corresponding. So again, a lot of, the procedures manual, you will, you know, again, for us, when in draft status, you see these, like the 703.5 where it shows agency content. You don't see that, right, on the finished product, but that helps us understand, right, well, that was pre-existing, right? So, and again, don't see it a lot on the procedure side of things as far as the policy side of things, but we also saw those state mandates, right? The state requirements. It would also say state there and or federal.
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Right. And then also best practices, right? There was a section there. So again, on the finished product, it doesn't say, you know, what that information is, but, you know, for us, when we're drafting these, it helps to have those guidelines. But okay, well, this is best practices, and right, this makes sense, right? You know, it's clear why they're doing it across the country, right? And again, most of ours, like you said, most of this stuff is very minor changes and more, I would say, format changes, you know. So again, we were fortunate enough, right, to, you know, we did have some like use of force, pursuit policies that were updated in the last year or so, last couple of years. And again, those were updated, but it was, you know, there was some additional updates, you know, to this. So again, it was easy to plug those in here as well, right?
Chief, policy 707, what is that?
So VirTra is the simulator, right?
Oh, okay.
That we have in-house there. Again, this was ultimately, right, previous agency content, right? This kind of just gives the instructor protocols and or a training session, right? Regarding the VirTra simulator that we use.
That'd be one that you could see for us changing because back when we got the virtual system back in 2016, it was the latest and greatest, and now with how technology is, it's all the VR stuff, right? So, you know, we may, depending on how things go, this would be an example where this might get altered to encompass the new whatever other systems we possibly explore.
We'll say being in that thing was one of the most tired things during.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a police officer.
The VR is just as good. It's portable and easier to use. Yeah.
So this would be a newer one for us, the phlebotomy program. We've recently have some law enforcement phlebotomists on staff, so that's something we had to add somewhat recently to the policies and procedures. But that just helps us cut down, obviously, cost of going to the hospital and all that to draw blood, excuse me, for our investigations. But to Scott's point, this would be definitely one that is very, very new.
Do you have to get a warrant to draw blood, or is that just when they refuse a breathalyzer stuff, they are mandated? Well, you can't.
Consent, sometimes, they can consent to a blood draw, otherwise you can go to warrant to get it. Yeah. And really if you think about the way having them on, we can hold them in our holding facility and pending that warrant. In the past, you have to apply the warrant and then you sit with them in the lab, which can go sideways sometimes depending. The longer someone has to sit there to realize what's coming, a lot of times they get a little froggy, but so it's really nice to be able to have this in-house.
Well, with that, those people they're great to do it. They're not going to be combative. If in any way they're going to restrict, resist, basically, we're going to take them to the hospital. So.
Left.
There's a new one over. Luckily, Chief Walker is head coach for football, so he can alleviate our concussion program.
Yeah. Return to play. Yeah.
1,000.
Let's see. Again, obviously, then we get into section 11, right? It's talking about personnel, right? Recruitment and selection procedures. It's got to probably be a good one for us to go over some point in time, right?
Good song.
Yeah, recruiting and selection commissioners.
Right? Again, I think, the last probably several months, I think we've had some good conversations and good meetings. It's good to see, I think the direction in which our police commission is headed. I think we've got a good group of individuals serving on that board that want to be there and want to be a part of it. Have the best interests, obviously, not only of the city of Michigan City, but I think the members of our department as well. So, and they're much more organized than it's been. So it makes it easier. Let's see, it talks about performance evaluations, right? We conduct these biannually, past performance periods, lays them out. Again, the categories in which will be, evaluated. Talks about promotional process, EAP, so any employee assistance program, illness and injury prevention. Early warning signs, I think, obviously really important. Disciplinary, right, system. It's important that we have those in place. Again, it does break that down quite a bit in detail. Again, obviously people think disciplinary and they all often think, right, that's a bad thing, right? But section 1 there, is an awards program, right? Discipline can be positive, right? Thinks of it as a negative thing, but
this hurts me more than it hurts you.
no.
You guys are still saying that?
No, I think obviously, right, it's important, again, that we do recognize our employees, and I like to think we do a pretty good job of recognizing, the good acts and good things that officers are doing on a daily basis, and promoting those, praise in public, discipline in private, right? And I think everybody's pretty fond of that saying. So again, this stuff helps us keep aligned with, our rules, our policies, our procedure. This is the procedure, I guess, on how to handle those things. So.
Secondary appointment's a good one. Obviously, officers that work details, such as the library or things of that, where they're off duty. But I think it's important to note that there's specific procedures that are in line with officers' ability to do that, as monitored through the chief's office. So there's no one's working an off-duty job without at least notification to the administration as well as approval. And so it kind of allows us to make sure that they're still operating within the way that we would want them to, and not working, a side job or a assignment or job rather that would potentially put them in too much liability or put the department in too much of a liability situation. So again, integrates kind of the stuff we're already doing with kind of our form that we have where people call up for weddings or special events in the city, in town, where officers can sign up for that. So kind of addresses everything as it relates to off-duty secondary employment.
Accumulated time, right? That's essentially right. Comp time for us. We obviously refer to it as ATO for us. Accumulated time off. Again, when officers work overtime for the for the city, for the department, they can choose, ultimately either time and a half pay, or comp time at that same rate. Again, they can only bank a maximum of 80 hours. So. So it doesn't become right excessive, and then they have a lot of hours on the books, right? We want to keep those books minimal as possible. And honestly, right, we don't get a lot of officers that bank 80 hours. There's a few that love to have that safety net, but for the most part, I think most of our guys hover around 3 to 4 to 5 days off. That's about it. So, but again, the procedures that outlines that, right? Again, that was one that we did update recently just because of the last year we implemented PACE, right? It's a scheduling software, electronic software which we can operate online, getting away from the old green cards, right? Chief, you guys use those for your whole career, right? It's essentially handwritten overtime slips and whatnot. So we finally upgraded and got out of that ancient procedure there, and
saving a lot of trees.
Yes, a lot of keystrokes too. Right, there's a lot of time and effort into manually entering all of those green cards. So. Any other ones you want to touch on there, Chief? Or any other questions? Thoughts, concerns?
Do you guys ever assign chapter review, that roll call to anybody? Like, hey guys, let's all review procedure 700s this week or something.
So that's really the role of the shift commander or the sergeants or whoever's on shift. They should be doing that regularly. With this program, we can send out daily training bulletins as well. If we feel like something needs refresh, we can kick that out and they'll review it.
I know Lieutenant Westfall is the commander of midnight shifts. He does case law and policy review during roll calls, which is funny because I think at first nod to that, you may think people would shy away, but he does a really good job of applying it to a situation that may have happened the night before or as a way to debrief. And it was funny because at the last training, one of those guys came up and was like, I know we were talking about, this case law, and then like, he's like, I had this situation, now it's able to apply. So, that is happening actively. And I think, to Chief's point, we really push our command staff to take any opportunity to merge these two worlds together, or three worlds if you were, policy, law, and obviously practical or real world. So.
Yeah, and again, that's, another side of Lexipol is that, right, they, again, offer those daily training bulletins where you can send those out and you can ask, right, you can create a simple question regarding, that policy procedure so they have to answer. And then also, Lexipol is also owner of Police One training, so it comes hand in hand with, using Lexipol. Is Police One training, right, there's everything from, like state mandated trainings, like if we wanted to just do the video type trainings, that we can do on there for state mandates, we can. We don't like to do all those, our state mandates through online training. But also, right, it has, 5-minute videos for officer wellness and, case law updates, just all kinds of different features. And again, once we get this thing fully implemented, I think, you're hopefully we'll see higher test scores on the promotional test, because everybody will be affluent of our policies and or procedures. So again, I don't know if the board has any other questions, comments, concerns. Obviously, we've appreciated the last several weeks to just kind of go through this at a, I would say an accelerated rate. Again, I know that we as a department have spent quite a bit of time going through this, and it helps to have some additional eyes on it.
Personally, appreciate the time and effort you guys have put into this.
This is very well organized.
Yeah. And again, I think it's, it's that next step, I think, in ultimately keeping our department up to date, right, on things. Obviously, technology has come a long ways. This is another way in which we can use technology, to keep our stuff, keep us informed, but also keep our things in line with, best practices, right, as things change throughout this country and law enforcement. And it's important that we stay aligned, right, with the ways in which others are performing the job as well.
Yeah, we talked about Harris. To see.
Can I send my back to the
To me or Kyle is fine.
Is there a specific email address?
I'll write it down for you.
Okay.
All right, do we have any other?
If I can get it to Mayor, yeah, she wants to see it before it comes.
Just nothing.
Tentatively, yeah. I would say
Okay.
tentatively.
So we have another meeting scheduled for next week, Monday. Can we tentatively keep that on the calendar because Melissa's working to update the whole city employee manual? And if that works for you guys, if you're kind of like burned out, and if you're burned out and you need a few weeks in between, I get that. But she has the whole citywide manual.
So I won't be here next Monday, but we should have a quorum if you guys will do it.
Okay.
We're gonna evaluate the city manual next week, is that what you just said?
No, she was going to present it.
Oh, okay.
So again, just like the police are doing, she's doing a complete overhaul of our city manual. And she wanted to present it, but just tentatively, we don't have it together yet.
Maybe a 2-week break.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking that.
I mean, that would-
So then the April 6th is the Board of Works meeting, so, or do you want to shoot for April 13th then? Does that work for everyone? Okay, that's fine. Let's April 13th.
Aside from next Monday, I'm pretty free, guys. Next Monday.
I won't be here for it though, I'm in a hearing all day.
Should bring this to
Fight right now.
Yes.
Now, so so we're not going to meet next Monday, we're gonna shoot for April 13th.
Let's go with the 13th.
All right, but I can't be here, so as long as you guys have it. Okay. All right. The other,
When's the fire starting?
so fire is supposed to bring me their fob as well. If you guys could return these to me, and then I'll put fire and then the employee manual on it. but fire is supposed to give me theirs. I haven't received it yet. I still have to pick through it, but I'm hoping that we can do theirs kind of similar to this.
Okay.
Does that work for you? Okay. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know is I did put a draft of a resolution together, because I'm assuming police is gonna put the manual for approval on the next Board of Works meeting. So I drafted a resolution where the board would adopt it, but in that resolution, and I'll send you guys a draft copy, I also defined major changes and minor changes, so that minor doesn't have to always come in front of the board. The chief would have discretion of doing it. So like if a statutory site changed, like we don't need to bring something like that. If it's something grammatical or something.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be easy if I put it in a resolution. So I'll send you guys a draft, but that's what my intent is.
All right. So we have a plan.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
All right, if nobody has any other questions or comments, we will go ahead and wrap up our police department review.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And then if you guys are done with these, then I'll put the other manuals on them once I get them.
Gianna has mine upstairs.
Okay.